Let's move on to the economy, the second most important story. Well, the third most important story. First it's Cracker Barrel, then it's Taylor Swift, and then we have the economy. So Howard Lutnick was... He's always on every show, it seems like.
Yeah,
but
he loves it.
He's been on every show over the last couple of days in the wake of the Intel deal. So let's start off with this clip of Howard Lutnick talking about how the Intel deal could potentially spiral into something else in the defense industry. Here's A1.
Didn't the U.S. government say, you know what, we use Palantir services, we would like a piece of Palantir. We use Boeing services, we would like a piece of Boeing. There are a lot of businesses that do business with the U.S. government that benefit by doing business with the U.S. government. I guess the question is, where's the line?
Oh, there's a monstrous discussion about defense. I mean, Lockheed Martin makes 97% of their revenue from the U.S. government. They are basically an arm of the U.S. government. They make exquisite munitions. I mean, amazing things that can knock a missile out of the air when it's coming towards you. But what's the economics of that? I'm going to leave that to my Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These guys are on it and they're thinking about it. But I tell you what, there's a lot of talking that needs to be had about how do we finance our munitions acquisitions. I think a lot of that is talking. And now you have the right people in the jobs and Donald Trump at the head.
Okay, Ryan, this I think is well worth considering in the context of the Trump administration right now, trying to build towards a sovereign wealth fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they said this is a step toward a sovereign wealth fund.
Right, and so that's, I mean, actually, Andrew Ross Sorkin's question about Palantir, it's kind of like, it does sound, I mean, it's just abnormal for the United States. And so his question being like, this is ludicrous, may not look so ludicrous in a few years when we look back and we're like, well, that was the beginning of the sovereign wealth fund.
Right. Yeah, you have Sorkin there who's putting this out there in a way that where he's saying, isn't this going to sound absurd to everybody?
Exactly.
And Howard Lutnick's like, yeah, actually, good point. Why are all of these people getting fantastically rich from Lockheed? Not just Lockheed, all of the parasites around Lockheed, all of Northern Virginia stretching for miles.
Except he doesn't really even use the word parasites. He's acting now like it's. But that's the thing, right? Like if you think it is a parasitic relationship, then you can either go in one of two directions. You can try to say that this is going to be a parasitic relationship that is also synergistic and nationalize to some degree, or you can say this is crony capitalism.
Well, if it's crony capitalism, make it actual strategic crony capitalism, where you're putting the cronies in place and you're developing your industrial policy from the top down rather than just enriching people. Sagar has been on a roll on Twitter lately.
Comrade and Jetty.
Go check out Brother Sagar's response to this. He's pointed out that, say, the New York Stock Exchange is way up in the last 20 years. China's is not. Yet China has developed an actual kind of economy and manufacturing base. And he points to Intel stock, which is like doubled in the last 15 years or whatever, while Intel itself is like hollowed out. Like we have a system that extracts wealth from our economy to the rich, and
it's a financialization.
What Sagar, myself, Howard Lutnick, and President Xi want to see is an economy that creates wealth and for the society itself.
On that point about Chairman Xi, apparently your comrade. Yeah. Let's roll A2 because Howard Lutnick talked about China as well.
Mr. Secretary, I'm really interested in how you personally would see it if another country did something of this ilk back, because I know how much you don't like non-tariff barriers.
You mean like China does it every day?
Yeah,
China does it every single day?
That's exactly what I want to ask about, because I totally get that perspective on China, and it's obviously led to so much of the last year's policy towards China in the last decade since President Trump came in. But what about from a UK perspective? What if the UK started to take stakes in domestic companies that kind of act as a China-like approach to this? No, but does that count as a non-tariff barrier?
I mean, you're not really thinking about the fact that the UK government nationalized British steel a couple of months ago?
Yeah.
So really?
Look,
but I'm
genuinely asking about that. Do we get punished for that now? Do we deserve to be?
No, you don't get punished for it, because what they did is, what happened is a Chinese company bought British steel, put British steel out of business, and was just importing, subsidized Chinese steel, put the British steel industry out of business. And the British figured out, along with the Trump administration, teaching them that you need steel to be a real country, to be able to defend yourself. And the British figured that out. They nationalized British steel. And now, because they nationalized British steel, America can do a deal with Britain on steel, because otherwise we would just be inviting the Chinese in. Imagine British steel was really Chinese steel.
And Ryan, there are no libertarians on the show, so we can treat the argument as foolish as it actually is, because you can't have national defense without industrial policy.
Without national.
Yeah, you can't actually have a military without industrial.
No.
You can't have a strong military without industrial policy. And so it's obvious, and the point Howard Lutnick is making is also obvious. And what the Trump administration is doing right now is just sort of putting the lie to all of the right's pretenses for years, and not just the right, sort of the centrist Democrats as well, that this is some type of like efficient free market middle ground. Who's been calling this capitalism with American characteristics? I forget who coined that, obviously in reference to socialism with Chinese characteristics, which is what Xi Jinping refers to the Chinese system as. But I don't understand the moral panic, because this is not worse than the status quo. Like that's my perspective. I think it comes with all kinds of disadvantages and baggage, but the status quo does as well. So it's like,
right. Well, you don't understand the moral panic.
It's not even that different.
It's not coming for you. It's coming for that guy.
Yeah.
Guys who wear cufflinks on a Tuesday and sit on CNBC in their starched white shirts as avatars for this industry, Wall Street, that has spent the last 40 years hollowing out the country. It was so instructive the way he said, but why should we be punished for this? Mm-hmm. What he wants is to be able to continue to hollow out our economy, put a giant funnel into the economy, suck all the wealth out of it, distribute it up to the very top, wear cufflinks on a Tuesday, watch the standard of living of the middle class erode, destroy unions. That was the goal. But then after that, they went just hog wild afterwards. Saying, why should we be punished for this? Like, why do you think you should be punished for this? Like, what you represent should not exist.
But I don't even know to what extent this will actually be punishing them, because...
Well, it's punishing them in the sense that they don't get to commit crimes against the American people forever. They might have to actually make something that makes the country and the world a better place.
I hope so. But it's just also like a 10%.
And they would see that, like they would definitely see that as a punishment.
Yeah,
it's great
absolutely.
For them. Now, we can set aside, like...
Because it takes away money from the hedge funds that need to be used to make us all better. Yeah. Right? You need to have that little extra money to trade on and put it into the hedge funds and have some fun with.
And I don't want to stand in the way of Comrade Trump when he's like on his way to nationalizing the economy here, but I would point out, like, if you want to share on the upside of corporate America's wealth creation for itself, the way to do that is you tax them when they actually make income, like you actually tax them. Buying 10% or just taking 10% of Intel without taking any controlling share of it is kind of a dead end, because it's like, okay, what are you going to do with that 10%?
Well, that's why I think...
Let's say Intel doubles in another 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, your 10% that you had is now worth, was worth 10 billion, now it's worth 20 billion. You sell it? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing with this 10%? Mm-hmm. The point of, government involvement with these companies, and when it comes to China or the UK or anywhere else, is to tell them what to do. Mm-hmm. Direct them, like, hey, we think actually it would be good if we made these chips somewhere in the country. So we're going to, as a policy, tell the companies that we're involved with, go do that. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the point, not so your portfolio kind of goes up. Because then you have the problem, what? You
100%.
just sell, you just go on Ameritrade and sell your shares? Like, is Trump day trading Intel shares?
Yeah, so I see this as a really pathetic statement on Congress and our ability to make any law. Like, conservative movement's consensus on what tax policy should look like is not what any of the Republican tax bills from 2017 to the One Big Beautiful Bill have looked like. It's the One Big Beautiful Bill is not what the American people would say they want their tax policy to look like. And there's actually a way that you can write tax policy without taking a 10% stake in Intel and a board seat that makes Intel a better company. You can close myriad tax loopholes. You can do all kinds of different things, carrots and sticks, to make Intel a better company. But we don't legislate anymore. Like, we actually do not legislate anything that isn't a gargantuan, omnibus. So we have no smart policies, and you end up then with a strongman in power, and that's basically, like, I'm not saying
my only disagreement
it's authoritarian. I'm just saying that it's like, because we are now so desperate to have companies like Intel that are getting the privileges of incorporation in the United States and all kinds of benefits from the taxpayers, because we can't even have them operating in a basically moral way, we have to try to force them through executive authority, which is, that's where we are. My
disagreement there would be that the Inflation Reduction Act was actual industrial policy. It said, and they called it this just to satisfy Manchin. It was basically, it was a clean energy bill.
Yeah.
And it said, we as a country believe that going forward, we need to move away from fossil fuels, and we need to pivot to clean energy, and we need a lot of energy, and so we need to invest in transmission. We need to invest in moving the energy from where it's produced to where it's then consumed, and we need to innovate in how we create that energy. And that was basically uprooted by Trump.
But that was also a giant. I mean, that bill was a hulking mess too, and parts of it had to be like a lot of the stuff made it hard for people who were trying to build factories, because there was all kinds of there's I think a pretty legitimate abundance argument about some parts of that bill. But either way, yes, I agree that was industrial policy, and I think there was a little bit of industrial policy in the One Big Beautiful Bill too.
There is, there's attempts at it. So meanwhile, this all goes hand in hand with Trump's continued push to take over the Federal Reserve. You put up A4 here. Breaking Point's talked about this earlier this week. This is probably the biggest news in the country at the moment. Lisa Cook is a member of the Board of Governors, and Trump wants to not just replace Powell when his term is up later this year, but to have a majority of basically pro-Trump doves. And in order to do that, he needs to get Lisa Cook out of the way. Lisa Cook has last night said she's going to sue to keep her position, arguing that Trump doesn't have the power to remove her for policy reasons. We all know that Trump is removing her for policy reasons, because he wants to take control of the Federal Reserve. They combed through her records to try to find some justification for that.
I actually reached out to Bill Pulte's office yesterday to ask how they stumbled upon the mortgage records, because a Georgetown professor wrote an interesting blog about how, in order to do that, you're basically, it's not like you're using the federal government to dig up the records. It wasn't as though somebody dropped them in their lap.
Right. There is a reasonable case to be made that Pulte himself broke the law. There's privacy records around what executives at the FHFA are able to look at when it comes to Americans' personal data. If the FBI, or let's say, Atlanta police, which is where one of her places was, condo, wants to, gets a tip on some mortgage fraud, then there are ways that we investigate mortgage fraud. You can file a subpoena, you can get a warrant, you can go, look into this stuff. You're like, wait, I don't think I've ever seen a criminal referral from the FHFA before.
Yeah.
Well, that's odd. I'm sure this is just a run-of-the-mill criminal case going on. Oh, they went fishing through all of Lisa Cook's information. Yeah, and they found, if people are not familiar, that she bought a place in 2021 and called it her primary residence in Michigan or wherever it was.
Yep.
2 weeks later, bought another one, a condo, and also called it her primary residence, which meant that she got a lower interest rate on one of them than she would have gotten if she would have called it her vacation condo.
It's pretty.
Now, 2021, by the way, last point, interest rates were 0.
Yeah.
So like the difference between
Why bother?
what she was gonna pay as a vacation home versus a primary, with her income and her, like, she's gonna get especially in 2021, you're getting a 2-something interest rate, no matter what. So did she corruptly save a few $100s a year on one of those mortgages? Probably.
Yeah. I mean,
Is it corrupt? Looks that way.
yeah. Yeah, it does.
What about if it's 2-hour parking and you park for 4 and you know you did, but you don't pay? I mean, that's corrupt.
It's corrupt. It's corrupt if you if you're a governor on Federal Reserve Board.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, and if this emerged any other way, like, you know what? Hey, she should suffer the consequences of her actions, whatever those would be. But it emerged because he wants to take control of the Fed so that he can do his tariff policy and then monkey with interest rates at the same time to try to balance that out, which you could argue the president should be able to do. And we shouldn't have these like technocrats over there controlling this.
So I think that's a good point.
But that's a separate argument
I think
some ways.
It's obviously true that the administration or that Donald Trump himself wants a full takeover of the Federal Reserve. So this would give him, if his nominees are confirmed, 4 out of the 7 seats. He has it's trying to fast track the man who's already been nominated for the 3rd seat to get him confirmed quickly, and is mulling right now whether to nominate someone to put in Lisa Cook's place right away, even though this is going to be tied up in the courts, maybe kicked actually to the Supreme Court. And actually, Ryan, you'll love this, could put Humphrey's executor back in the spotlight because this is like actually the history of Humphrey's executor playing out the question of unitary executive theory that the Trump administration, or the theory that the Trump administration has of what executive power should look like, is more in line with Franklin Delano Roosevelt than it is with basically certainly any other Republican president. But that's what the question is, whether this is truly independent. Is it different from some of the other independent agencies that the Trump administration has been saying should be brought to heel by a president, whether they're Republican or Democrat? Is it different because it's the Federal Reserve? That's something that's also been argued in the courts. So this is a really significant move because it is going to test some fundamental questions. And as we look back on the first 7 months of the Trump administration, 7.5 months of the Trump administration, it is remarkable how many fundamental questions of governance are being kicked to the Supreme Court for like foundational constitutional tests.
And it's going to test my theory of the court. I'm curious what you think will happen, because my theory of the court has always been that it is a radical, far right-wing court, but it has deep ties with the Reagan business wing of the Republican coalition, and therefore will push back on Trump's more populist efforts when it comes to undermining what they see as the integrity of the kind of neoliberal economy. And this goes right to it. You can put up A5. Markets already. So on the one hand, markets are responding in a schizophrenic way because on the one hand, they're like, whoa, this could mean even deeper interest rate cuts, which could mean asset price bubbles, and so therefore we need to buy. On the other hand, it looks like Argentina and Turkey models are being applied here in the United States, which means we're going to get runaway inflation. And so the 10-year note plummeted, which means interest rates that the U.S. has to pay for its debt, went up significantly around these inflation concerns. Because the idea is that whether it's Bernie Sanders or Trump or whoever, if they control interest rates, then one of the checks on what they can do, the bond market, is not as immediate a concern. So if Trump's doing tariff policy and it's destroying the economy, he can just dial down, he can just print a whole lot of money, basically, to try to literally paper over the problems that his policies are creating. And so then the thinking from Wall Street is, well, then they're going to do a lot of these problematic things. They're going to bust all the budgets. In the short term, they'll cover it up with by printing money. And in the long term, you'll get inflation, like in Argentina or Turkey or wherever else. And so that's what's driving the other Wall Street moves. So, but they're sort of confused. So my idea of the court would be that their Reagan instincts will take over and be like, we don't actually want this much of a populist revolution to the point where the president is just setting interest rates. What's your read on the court? You know these jackals better than I do.
I think your read is correct on that. It's not just a Reagan instinct necessarily. It's also, I mean, you're looking at the full picture of the administration's moves here. I'm curious how the process question plays into this, because I referenced earlier the Georgetown law professor, Adam Levitin, who wrote a blog post that said, quote, "The only way anyone would have noticed a problem with Cook's loan application is that Pulte, as head of FHFA, directed Fannie or Freddie to pull her application, and that is unheard of." Does that also factor in? And by the way, I sent that to the FHFA and asked if that was true. Didn't get a response back, but I'm curious if that plays into the broader question of how this played out legally. Is there a legal, if you're a cop and you don't read the Miranda rights, you got a problem in your prosecution. Is there a question of how all of this happened that would also kick in? So somebody even like Justice Alito is uncomfortable with the decision. I don't know, but I think your instinct is correct that it wouldn't necessarily even just be a Reagan instinct so much as a normie instinct. I don't know if that makes sense, but just discomfort with the...
Yeah, right. They're normies too, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and they're also probably like, ooh, when I bought that boat, what did I put down as my income?
Right.
Like, uh-oh, am I in trouble now too?
Well, and there's this divide that has never been...
Clarence Thomas is still on the Supreme Court.
Clarence Thomas is still there.
Just flagrantly corrupt.
Oh, come on.
Are you like joking? Like the guy, he forgot to disclose like enormous amounts of bribes, and his like rich friend bought his like mom's house next to like.
I agree. All of that
corrupt.
was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. All of that was bad. I don't think it was like evidence of significant corruption. He was.
If you're taking gifts,
they're all vacationing with rich people, and the RV loan I'll say was bad. The forgiven RV loan was
all
bad.
bad stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone in general.
It was just friends. It had nothing to do with the fact that he's a Supreme Court justice.
I mean,
it's very clear. As soon as he said that he was broke and was thinking about retiring, and they're like, "Oh my God, we're going to lose this seat," the money started flowing to him. That's the timeline. He wrote a letter to Congress saying, "Supreme Court justices aren't paid enough. I can't keep Ginny in the RVs that she needs."
This was like 15 years.
Yeah, way back.
Yeah.
So he said this to congressional Republicans: "You need to give more money to Supreme Court justices. It's not fair, or I'm going to quit." Basically, that was the message of the letter that he sent out.
I think he's probably right about Supreme Court justices, by the way.
Yeah, but they found another way to pay him.
Yeah.
The money just started flowing in all of a sudden. Not so he would rule any differently, but so that he would stay on the bench. So anyway,
that's a good point. But I think
the
the primary narrative is that he's being bribed by like Harlan Crow to rule differently in the court. And
no,
I think
he was bribed to stay on the court.
The reason
don't
they're
quit,
friends
Clarence. We'll take care of you
because they agree. Right.
We'll get Ginny in whatever RV she wants.
Ideological compatriots.
Yeah.
Right. And the RV loan was, I think the last part of it was forgiven, something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that is to say, Clarence Thomas actually might be the interesting one on this question, because what I was just about to say was the salience of the unitary executive theory hasn't been strong in the conservative movement for a long time, because you have this group of people who really wants to be critical of FDR, and the line of the conservative movement has been FDR governed like a king. But then same thing with Obama. And then there's this also argument that's existed since Nixon that the president should have power over the sort of deep state executive agencies. And those two things are kind of in conflict. And I'm actually curious how Clarence Thomas would rule on that, because there is no consensus among the Reaganite Federalist Society world on that. MAGA tends to be more FDR, obviously, more pro-governing like FDR than old school Republicans. But at the same time, it's an argument that old school Republicans could get behind too, because some of them went through it with Nixon.
Now, we were going to talk briefly about this crazy person in the White House talking about how gas is under $2 in some places, but like, why? We're tight. Show's getting tight. Let's move on to his cankles. What do you think?
Let's say Trump did say gas was below $2. Gas Buddy says we're not seeing any stations reported to us below $2 a gallon
No,
this
of course
morning.
not. No, nobody's seeing that.
So
Yeah.
yes. Anyway.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.